Hey, what's your secret?
So when I was between the ages of 10 and 12, my mom had this cinnamon apple candle that smelled so good. And it was off-brand. It wasn't like Yankee Candle. It was like some off-brand. So it was like really soft and didn't have the same consistency as a normal candle. And I loved it so much that every time I'd walk by, if it wasn't being burned, I would take a little bit and eat it.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't.
I was so disgusted with myself now. But my mom weirdly never said anything, so we would just burn it and it would solidify again and you wouldn't be able to see the finger marks. And yeah, that's my secret.
Oh, I can't even.
A quick note before we get started. There's a couple of moments in the show that I'd label adult content, so please consider where you listen to the show.
So she has this interior screen porch to protect herself at night from the bats.
Today, my guest found herself under the thumb of powerful people in small towns.
But it ended up being a lot worse for me.
And no matter where she turned, she was back up against the same people.
It's kind of horrifying for people who aren't in the situation to hear these stories.
She bounced from one bad situation to another.
So I actually pulled down my bed covers, and there were dozens of them crawling around in my bed.
That is the worst, man. All the while looking for a way out.
It was embarrassing, and that's another thing that made me keep it a secret, even though it wasn't something that was my fault.
Understood. Today, The Secret Room presents The Bats and the Bees.
Hi, Ben. My name is Judy, and when I moved to a small town, I found myself trapped in its incestuous web. I couldn't speak out about the awful ways people treated me, because it was at the hands of the people who had the power. They can't get me now, though, because I've moved, so I'm free to tell my small town secrets and let the chips fall where they may.
I'm Ben Ham. Hi, Judy. Welcome to The Secret Room.
Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm good. It's so great to have you here.
Yes, I'm excited to be here.
So what you've got for us today is a collection of secrets, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Can I ask you what state you're in?
I lived in the state of Montana. I am now in a different state, but these take place in Montana.
In this particular small town you lived in the great state of Montana, what was the population?
The population for the first time I lived there was around 10,000. The second place I lived, it was a population of about 900.
And is there an overarching reason why these stories that you're going to share with us, they're kind of astounding and unbelievable, are things you haven't shared? Or is there a reason why they are secrets?
Yes. So the landlords that were in charge of the properties that I lived in were members of the board in the place that I worked. So they were kind of my bosses.
And did they tell you not to share these stories?
Yes, they actually did. I posted something on Facebook one time about one of the problems I'd been having, and she told me that she could take me for slander if I continued.
Oh my gosh. And she'd probably fire you too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that was kind of the underlining. She didn't say that, but that was the underlining kind of assumption.
Got it. So you mentioned this was an employer. So let's start with the job you held in this small town. Can you set the scene for us?
Sure. So I worked for a nonprofit. I don't want to kind of talk about exactly what I did, but I worked for a nonprofit that had a board of directors.
What was your relationship with the board of directors? Did you report directly to them?
Well, sort of. So we have had a difficult time having an executive director. They keep either leaving or in one case, she actually passed away. So during the time I was there, I had 5 different bosses in about 6 years. And so in between bosses, we would have an interim director, and he was actually the executive board president. He reported directly to the board. And of course, the executive director, when we had one, would report directly to the board as well.
And were you friendly with any of the board members?
Yes. Well, it was an extremely small town and everybody knows everyone. So it was impossible to interact with anyone that wasn't related to them or wasn't them directly or had some sort of connection to them, like their best friend. They had a lot of power in the community because of how small it was and how everyone knows everybody.
And so there was one particular lady on the board that you were friends with, right? Where some of your problems originated from.
Yes, there was actually two. I lived with both of my board member friends.
Oh, you were living with basically who were your bosses?
Basically, yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So there's not a whole lot of options for renting in this particular place because most people already have their houses. So renting options are super limited and they're not even really publicly posted. They might be on Facebook, but really you have to know someone who has a place for you to rent.
So you took a job with a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
You're friends with a couple of the board members, and they are also landlords, as I understand it?
Yes.
And
most of the board owns property as well.
Okay. So you were able to get hooked up with a sweet place to live based on your relationship.
Yes.
How did that go?
Well, I am not from this very small town. I'm not even from that state. So I was kind of the new kid in town, and I'm no stranger to bad renting situations because I lived in Paris for a while, and I lived in kind of one of those maids' chambers that are above the really wealthy houses.
Okay.
And I didn't have a toilet then.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay, that's a story. What did you do? When the time came.
Well, I had a shower, but the toilet was communal, so we would have to go to the communal toilet to use the restroom. Yeah. And it was a very, very small apartment. Mostly kind of maids and things worked there. I was an au pair.
Okay.
And they would be responsible for buying my food. They didn't buy me a whole lot of stuff. They would buy me kind of like raw lettuce and maybe some bread. So
life's essentials.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would save up. I would have to say, because we didn't make a whole lot of money there. I would save up for like luxuries like salad dressing. And I would just like cherish it. Every once in a while, they'd get me some goat cheese. And I would be like, oh, I'm going to make this goat cheese last for forever. It's going to be so great. And then I would eat it all in one sitting.
Sounds good.
Yeah. But it was rough because, we were sharing a bathroom with all these other people. And it was the 7th story of a building with outdoor stairs. And,
oh my God.
It was the size of a closet. So I'm not a stranger to renting situations, but I never expected this particular one. The first board member that became my friend, she would, huge supporter of me. She found me this house to live in. The house looked like kind of I called it like an industrial bomb shelter.
Okay.
Because that's kind of what it looked like from the outside. It was just this concrete, really crappy house, but I was just very grateful to find something that I could afford. They charged about $800 a month rent for a 1-bedroom, and I was hoping to make that place kind of a permanent, sort of semi-permanent while I was working at this particular job. But I had never experienced before the whole like no contract renting.
Interesting. Okay. And are there laws like tenants' rights?
Yes, there are. Montana is the people who live here are very proud people, and they don't really like the government interfering with their business. They don't like being told what to do by powers that be. So as a result of that, a lot of times contracts are verbal even. There's no written paper.
Wow.
I was month to month. I think I signed a paper at one point, but, there was no promise on either end. They could boot me out just as easily as I could leave.
Yeah, it's a little risky for the landlord too, though, because you could damage the apartment, and without a lease in place, they might not have any legal recourse over you.
Oh, absolutely.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. But it ended up being a lot worse for me. So let me kind of describe this place.
Yeah, please.
It was so crappy on the inside. The basement was unfinished, but it wasn't just unfinished. It had rocks and things caving into the basement. The floors were made of dirt. It had all of its kind of piping for the water just running through a random room with, no kind of retainer walls or anything like that. So there were chunks of rocks falling down all the time.
Oh my gosh.
And there wasn't a lot of insulation. So the pipes were just kind of sitting in the middle of the room, and it's so funny. If you turn the light down in that room, you could see it through the tub drain.
Okay.
So you could have kind of a glowing tub drain.
Cool.
For this tiny little bathroom. And it was obviously also well water. So at least I didn't have a water bill, but I did have a pump and these exposed pipes in this place that gets regularly to the double-digit negative temperatures in the winter.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, does it get cold there? Must.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's been the worst we've had since I've been here has been negative 35.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because you don't feel the difference past negative 10 or so, but I can always tell when it's really, really cold because your nose hairs freeze, like your boogers freeze in your nose.
Okay.
Which is probably super gross to hear, but that's when you know it's really, really cold is whenever you have any kind of liquid on you, it immediately freezes when you walk outside.
Wow. Okay. So it is cold, cold. Am I expecting you to tell me the pipes froze?
Wow, how could you have guessed? That's exactly what happened.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Again, this was kind of a secret because everyone knows everyone and reputations are very important.
I see.
So at one point, I posted on Facebook and I was friends with my landlord / board member. And I had posted something and I was just trying to make a joke. I was like, so how high do the weeds need to be before you call the city? Is 4 feet over your head an appropriate time?
Mm-hmm. That probably didn't go over very well.
No, she got really upset. She said she could take me in for libel and that everybody saw it. And, you know, how could I do this to her and damage her reputation? And so what she did in this instance is she actually went the other way and went super passive aggressive and came and reseeded my whole lawn. Oh. And she had me on like this ridiculous watering schedule where I had to rotate the sprinkler. She took all the weeds out, obviously, and she would drive by my house and call me and say, I noticed you haven't moved the sprinkler this morning. Like, you need to do that. Wow. And just kind of took it the other direction and passive aggressively harassed me after that. So that was the start of the souring of our relationship. Oh, my
gosh. With your friend / boss / landlord.
Yes.
Yikes. It's difficult swimming with the big fish in the little pond. How things go from bad to worse is coming up. And now we pick back up with Jane's story.
You are right. The pipes froze. And so it was one winter, and this was around my birthday, which is New Year's Eve.
Wow.
Yeah, so like right around Christmas, and I'm stuck in all this snow and with these pipes that are just in my basement, in my unfinished kind of caving in with earth basement. And even though I dripped the water, that was the really cold winter when it stayed to negative 35 for a couple of like weeks, I want to say. So the pipes froze. And to her credit, she came out and tried to fix them over the holiday, which was very nice of her. But she came up to me and she said, so I've checked out the pipes and it looks like the pump is broken. So we're looking at not having water in your place until at least March. But here's what I will do for you. And of course, I started crying because I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Right.
And she said, what we'll do for you is we will give you a generous discount on rent. So instead of $800, you can live in this place for $500 with no running water. And with that extra $300, you can go to the grocery store and buy yourself some bottled water to flush your toilet.
Oh, my God. This is more like a tenement. I mean, it's
yes,
hardly a house. I mean, and the dirt floor must have been very cold.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't even let my cats down there. I was afraid they would, get hit by a rock or something.
Yeah, seriously. And so, Judy, why did you take this apartment in the first place? I mean, maybe I should have asked you that, 15 minutes ago. But but you walk into a house in that kind of condition. Is it really all that was available to you?
Yes. I lived in kind of an oil-rich region. And when we were kind of on the cycle of the boom and bust, and we were kind of going into a bust. But when I first got there, a 2-bedroom apartment was $2,100 a month. They were nicer units, but they weren't things that I could afford working for a nonprofit. And in fact, about an hour from my apartment, they had prices that were comparable or more expensive to living in New York City.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So trendy, trendy small town.
Yeah. I mean, sort of. It was so weird because they would hike up the rent, but they wouldn't use any of that tax money for infrastructure. So the town is kind of falling apart and, nobody can afford it that comes in new. So what ends up happening is just a bunch of the people that have always lived there and have their houses and that oil royalty, they end up staying and not really improving the community.
Sounds like the town is not run very well.
No, it's not.
So you're busy flushing the toilet with Fiji water? Do you remember what brand?
Well, when I asked her, I was like, well, how will I shower? She was like, well, don't you have like friends to go to their house to shower?
Yeah, come on. And he's like, yeah, you're my friend.
And I just was like, I can't live in a house that doesn't have. So she actually ended up fixing it and thawing it. But then she blamed the whole thing on me because she said that I didn't run the water, but I did. So she was like, any college educated person knows that when it gets to 32 degrees above zero, you have to run your water constantly. And I was like, well, they didn't teach, Pipes 101 in Montana at my school.
But you were running the water anyway. I mean,
I was. She tried to say I wasn't, but I was.
And it's kind of astounding to me that when push came to shove a little bit, she actually was able to fix it. Like, why didn't she just fix it in the first place? Just too much trouble.
Yeah, I don't know, but it was just a bad situation. And,
Yeah. It's interesting. She didn't miss the money. It was too much trouble for her to fix the pipes. She'd rather take a $300 rent decrease.
Yeah. In a place that doesn't have running water, which I don't even think is legal.
Yeah.
I don't know if she wasn't banking on me talking to a lawyer. She knew I was strapped for cash because she knows exactly what I was paid. Right. Considering she made those decisions for me. So I'm thinking she was banking on that. I don't really know, but they did end up fixing it. But in the spring, she actually hiked the rent price in order to get me out of there because I guess I was just too much trouble because I wanted running water.
Yeah, you're just so demanding.
I know, right?
Right. So she got you out of there?
Yes. And I moved from there to a place with someone who I was really best friends with. Her name was Carol. And she was just a very, very sweet person. She was a little bit elderly and she lived in this old bank building that had also been at one point a doctor's office and I think a dentist. And it was this really cute historic brick building. The apartment upstairs was the one she rented out to me. She gave me a heck of a deal and she got me out of there. And so I was very thankful she was there for me.
I have to ask, Carol, how did you know her? She didn't happen to work on the board also, did she?
Yes, she did.
Oh, my God.
Not only that, but she got me a part-time job over there, too. So she was kind of my boss twice.
She got you a part-time job where?
It was just kind of a...
I see. Okay. So at a different place.
Mm-hmm. Different place.
Was there any bad blood between the two board members who were also your landlords because you took Carol's apartment?
Yes. So the first board member, she gave me this speech that was supposed to move me on my move out day. And she was coming to do an inspection and then, which I was confused about because she had never inspected it when I moved in. Okay. She gave me this speech and she started crying and she was like, I'm not going to inspect this. What? She was like, Judy, you've hurt my feelings so badly. What? And my feelings will be hurt for the rest of my life.
Oh, so dramatic.
Yeah, because I wanted running water. What was wrong with me?
I don't know. You are just such a difficult tenant.
I know. And so I had a hard time because I was trying really hard not to laugh. And that was not the right reaction for that particular situation because she was very serious. So she remained on the board. She was an appointed member of the board. And then when she found out that I moved in with another board member, she made a huge stink about that too. Like, how dare you? Like, you didn't trust me, but you trust her.
After she raised the rent to get you out.
Yes, I know.
She just not happy with anything.
I know.
When all this is going on, you're bouncing around, between landlords and affiliations with these people. Were you at all concerned that your job was in jeopardy?
Yes, it was actually a constant source of stress for me. I dealt with a lot of stress during the time that I worked there.
I would expect so.
Yeah.
So how was the new apartment? Mm-hmm. Was it just like tons better, just running water and great view, lots of light, heat in the winter, no exposed pipes, no dirt floors?
Well,
everything you could dream of in an apartment, an inside bathroom of your own.
Yes. It was nicer. It had a lot of natural light, and it was obviously the price was right. $300.
That's great.
Yeah. So what I was able to do with that extra cash is I was actually able to purchase a car.
Okay.
Because the car that I was driving at the time I had paid $500 cash for it. It was an old little hatchback. I loved it to death. I had come all the way out to Montana with it from my home state. But it was starting to have problems. I couldn't leave town in it, and it wouldn't go above about 45 miles per hour.
Okay.
At one point, the exhaust fumes started pumping into the cabin of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to buy a reliable car, which was such a blessing because now I have a newer Jeep. But I still loved that old car, and I parked it right outside of this building along with my Jeep, but I didn't drive it very much because it wouldn't go on the interstate. But the apartment was very nice, considering what I came from, especially. It was still pretty worn down, a little rough around the edges, and I hadn't really seen the downstairs yet. But I knew moving into there that she had a consistent problem with bats.
Uh-oh, this can't be good. Would you move into a place that had a consistent problem with bats? Find out what happens if you ever do. That's coming up after the break. And we are back with the final chapter of Jane's story. You're just turning in one set of problems for another.
Yeah. Now, I'm a fan of bats. I think they're great for the environment and everything.
But not to live with.
Yeah. She kind of downplayed the problem when I moved in.
Oh, Judy, there's a couple of bats, but,
Yeah.
Wake up with a little guano on your pillow. No big deal. Just brush it off.
Yeah, well, they lived in this kind of fake wall in between the outside wall and the inside wall of my apartment.
Okay.
And they were only really active around June, July, and August, which is in our summer. And I didn't learn until after I moved into this place that, so she owned the building and she was living in the unit right beside mine.
Okay.
And we were both on the second story. And it was only after I moved in that I learned that the bats were such an issue that she had actually constructed a screen porch in the interior of her apartment with no windows.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so let me understand this. The bats actually enter the apartments? Like they're not just like in the attic or between the walls?
Well, they would get into her place. They wouldn't get into mine. So she, instead of actually paying to have the problem properly dealt with, she's also very cheap. You should know that.
Okay.
Carol does not like to spend money on anything that she deems unnecessary. And so she refused to pay to have a professional take care of this problem. And because we were on the second story, it was difficult to get to for her to deal with it herself, but I don't think she would have put the effort in. So she has this interior screen porch to protect herself at night from the bats until they broke into the screen porch one night and one was crawling up her back.
Oh my
and another
God.
one was on her chest. And she didn't even have a bed in there. She was sleeping on a recliner.
They were crawling on her while she was asleep?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so, I'm thinking like, you need a rabies shot or something,
Yeah,
you know?
seriously. Well, okay.
Yeah.
She woke up?
She woke up and she shook them off. But from there on out, she bought this like kind of trundle, like kind of safari tent bed
Okay.
that she zipped up around her actual mattress.
Right.
And
okay.
I know this because I helped her set it up.
Okay, I have to laugh. So You sent me a link to this canopy screen party tent.
Yes.
It is the most hilarious thing. It's like a giant mosquito netting tent that you might put up in the backyard.
Yep.
Right?
She slept in that inside her mattress every night.
She is dedicated to not resolving this bat problem. You would think that after you woke up with bats crawling on you front and back, that might motivate you to do something about the problem. But instead, she went right to Amazon.com and solved the problem with her canopy screen party tent.
Yes.
Google it.
Yes, it's unreal. And so it's kind of horrifying for people who aren't in the situation to hear these stories, but she would tell them like they were funny party stories.
You know what I'll say?
Yeah, she would tell them like, ha, it's so funny. My house is infested with bats and this is what I do. Ha, ha, ha. And everybody's just looking at like her just with horror.
Yeah.
Like, are you serious?
So were there any pets around?
Yes, I had 3 cats and she had 1.
All right. Now, how do cats and bats get along besides rhyming?
Well, she would zipper her cat into the canopy tent with her. So her cat was protected. My cats never actually saw a bat because they didn't break into my place.
Thank goodness.
So there were some health issues, though, that I didn't know until I moved in. And so one of them is when you would knock on the false wall in between, where the bats lived, you could actually hear the guano like falling down, like all the way down to the first story because there was so much of it.
How long did it take you to figure out that that's what it was?
Well,
like you probably heard it a couple of times. We're like, what's going on?
Yeah, I didn't know until a former tenant of hers who, according to her, mysteriously stopped talking to her and stopped being her friend. But when I found out from him, he moved out because of the bats and her refusal to take care of them. So he was the one that told me, Go ahead and knock on that false wall and see what happens. And when you hear what happens, that's guano.
Okay, so what is the health concern? Because obviously the guano is in a pretty well sealed area away from you. Mm-hmm. But I presume that's still a problem.
Well, yeah. So I actually have at the time I had 2 FIV cats.
What's that?
That is feline immunodeficiency virus. It's basically HIV for cats.
Okay.
And I adopted these cats knowing that they were immunocompromised. And one of them started to get really, really ill. At various points in the time that I lived there, different ones would get ill. Even the healthy cat that did not have FIV, she got so upset when we lived there that she made herself sick and she almost died. Animals in general are sensitive. And so I feel like she somehow sensed what a terrible environment this was. But it was a polished turd. Do you know what I mean? Like it looked nice on the inside. But I was starting to get concerns about the guano just because there is no kind of central air or anything like that. And
sure. Yeah, just asking the question. I know I would not want to live in an apartment where the walls were full of guano.
Yeah.
Could get airborne maybe if it was disturbed too much and air travels. And I do not want to be breathing in guano dust.
Yes, I know. And there's a type of mold that grows on. I know all sorts of things about bats because I've done a lot of research. There's a certain type of mold that grows also on the bat guano that's really bad for respiratory things.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So there's a whole constellation of problems associated with these bats.
Yes.
Did you ask her to, look into fixing this problem?
Yes. Again, this lady, Carol, is extremely cheap. She did not like to pay people to do things, but she had a unit downstairs. And so what she would do is she would kind of find these guys through word of mouth, and they would promise her that they would fix the bats. And also the fact that my apartment ceiling, when it rained a lot, it would rain inside.
Okay. So you were on the top floor?
Yes.
And the roof was leaking.
It wasn't just leaking, Ben. It was seriously, like raining like it was outside.
So you couldn't put a few buckets out. It was just coming down.
I was putting tarps.
Wow.
It was ridiculous. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
So she would find these characters, these really sketchy characters, and she would trade free, lodging in this downstairs unit if they would promise her to fix the ceiling. And they were really very interesting. I'm pretty sure that most of them were on drugs and had criminal records. And she's inviting them into this place where we live. One was kicked out for abuse, and he was abusing his girlfriend who was living there at the time and refused to press charges. There was a second one. Oh, gosh, this guy. He had just knocked all his teeth out. Oh. And trying to paint a picture here.
Yeah.
He was in his 60s, and he had a girlfriend who was in her 20s.
Okay.
And she always used to be really jealous of me for some reason. I was like, I am not interested in this old toothless man, but I actually, I went downstairs at one point to get something out of my car, and they were in the apartment, and his assistant was sitting in the living room, and the girlfriend and this old guy were in the bedroom, and he was naked on the bed with the window wide open. She was kind of stroking his arm or something. He had seen me come down, and instead of shutting the door or putting covers up, he just kind of, sorry if this is crass, he kind of stuffed his penis in between his legs.
Okay, so it was not visible to you?
Yeah, so he kind of Ken-dolled me.
Okay. Great verb.
Yeah. And then his girlfriend was staring at me like I was going to steal her mans. I was like, no, I am not into this guy. Like, I just wanted to get, something I bought at the grocery store. I forgot to bring it up.
That is a really odd story. So, well, I'm glad he, wanted to be modest. That's good. Was anybody else exposed to this Ken-dolling?
Yes. So his assistant was just in the living room on his phone, and he was present for that entire exchange with her, which was very strange because they were clearly having an intimate moment, and his assistant was just right in the next room with the door open.
That is some weird stuff. I like that this guy had an assistant too.
Yeah, he was the guy that did all the work. So whenever it started really, really raining, he would send him up to the second story of this scary building, and the guy would put tarps up there in the rain.
You've got running water when it rains, for sure.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess it was the opposite problem for my other place.
Seriously, now you've got too much water.
Yeah, but I imagine that the guano and stuff would get soaked up there too and actually enter inside. That was a concern for me at the time.
But you stuck it out.
I did.
Guess you didn't have many options because...
Well...
I don't know. I mean, it seems like it wouldn't be a bad idea to move.
Yeah, and it was tough because, she was my double boss, and I was also very close friends with her. We would go and hang out with each other. She would actually invite one of my cats over to visit. She wouldn't necessarily need to see me. She just wanted to see my cat. He was really chill. He was a good boy. We would go out to dinner together. We hung out together. And so there was kind of a sense of obligation there, too, of just, and she was living alone, and she was kind of in her late 60s, and she was not in very good health. She had a lot of surgeries and stuff. And so in a very real sense, I didn't want to abandon her to this terrible place.
Okay. Yeah. You're kind of watching out for her. I mean, she is your friend.
Yeah. She had a hard time going up the stairs, and she just had all sorts of, medical issues. So she was very close with me, and I loved her very much.
Oh.
So.
Okay, so you're living in this place with bat guano and bats in the walls. Plenty of water running through the ceiling when it rains.
Yes.
And you've got some nice natural light. So you're having a, not a fantastic experience at this new apartment. And you've outlined a few problems, but I can't imagine it did not end there. Am I right?
Right.
Okay.
So this is an even smaller town than the one I came from. So not only does everybody know everybody, there are certain last names that are completely untouchable.
Like powerful families?
Yes. In fact, I even had a little girl one time. She was like, my last name is, I don't know, Smith.
Oh.
Made something up. She was like, you don't know who I am? And I was like, no, I'm not from here.
Gosh.
But they would get passes in school so they could do whatever they wanted, carte blanche in school. And because of who they're related to, they were just kind of pushed through. The education was terrible there. And they'd also bought into this crazy system in the high schools. It's like a $10,000 kind of No Child Left Behind system, but on crack. It was like no child can fail ever. In fact, no child can get below a C. And if they do, it's the teacher's fault.
Wow. So there's a guaranteed minimum grade.
Yeah. And so as a result, none of the kids would study for anything because they had limited chances to turn things in. They had unlimited chances to redo tests. The teachers would just have to rewrite the tests until they passed above a C.
Gosh, was this a town rule?
Yeah, it was a school rule.
Mm-hmm. But it wasn't statewide. It's just kind of local.
Yeah, they had bought into this crazy system. I'm not sure what it's called, but it's this kind of guy, and he would get on the phone with you and counsel you as a teacher if your students weren't performing well. And, you know, and certain last names, of course, they couldn't give C's even. They would have to get A's. And there's also no discipline. I had a friend, and I can share this because she's not over there anymore either. She got asked by one of her middle schoolers if she was allergic to the taste of gum.
Okay. A middle schooler asked her that.
A middle schooler asked her that, a boy. And all she could do was say, that's not appropriate. That's all she could do. What
a charmer.
Yeah.
And that's all she could say because he had the name of a powerful family in town.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there was no discipline.
No discipline. So when they knew they were leaving, I don't think they taught for the last couple of months. They would just go in and read books. It was so crazy. Yeah.
I mean, that kid was really seeing what he could, how much he could get away with.
And it worked.
Yeah, he knew it.
Yeah. So my car, my beloved car, I named him William Van Rensselaer because his license plate was WVR. It was like a tiny little car. It was maybe 700 pounds soaking wet, just this little hatchback. But again, I got my Jeep, so I didn't really need it, but it was still kind of a sentimental thing for me. And the town's not all bad. The police were pretty nice. I would get random texts in the middle of the night saying hey, this is Officer So-and-so. We noticed that your Jeep had a door open, so I shut it.
Oh, okay. That's nice. I don't get that kind of service here in Washington, D.C. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It was really cute in that way. And the police kind of looked out for you. But there was a neighbor of ours who was a beekeeper.
Okay.
And he, even though my car was parked on a public street, it was parked in an area that his workers like to park. And so he was irritated.
Oh, you were encroaching on his space.
Yes. So he was best friends with the new mayor in town. So he called his best friend, the mayor, and said, listen, you got to do something about this car. I don't want it there.
Which one of your cars was it? The Jeep or the old lovable hatchback?
It was the hatchback. The Jeep moved every day. And instead of giving me a ticket or a warning, the mayor decided to flex his new mayoral muscles and call the cop and say, hey, you need to tow this car.
Wow. That's 0 to 60 in a second.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even illegally parked, right?
No, it wasn't.
So even a warning would have been inappropriate.
Yeah. So the police officer on duty, he refused to do it because he was like, I need to go check it out. If it's not breaking any laws, I'm not going to tow it, which was great. So he went and checked it out. And he said, I can't in good conscience tow a car that's not doing anything wrong. So if the story had ended there, I might not even find out about it. But the mayor waited until the night cop, who happened to be the other cop's wife, came on duty.
Well, she should have similar commitment to her duty.
You would think. But she was a little bit more fearful of the power, dynamic, because that is her boss, right?
Right.
So she had the car towed after hours prices. She did feel guilty afterwards, so she looked me up on Facebook.
The town square.
Yes. And she gave me a call and she said, yeah, we've towed your car to the next town.
How far away was that?
About 11 miles highway.
So your town does not have any kind of tow lot?
No, it does not.
The town outsources to the town down the road?
Yes.
Okay, so your car's gone. Your beloved hatchback.
Yes. And she calls me after the fact.
Right.
And is like, oh, this has already happened. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you lived here. So I go to the towing place and they want $2,000 for a car I only paid $500 for.
Well, I guess you're not going to shell out $2,000 for that car.
No. And it wasn't even really in working condition at that point.
Oh.
Oh, gosh. It was already totaled.
Okay.
Like, it wasn't worth anything.
So you're like, good riddance.
Well, so the towing company wanted me to pay this money because they didn't want the car either. And I was like, listen, this is what has happened. This is a crappy situation for me too. But if you want the money, you're going to have to ask the town for it. And so the town actually ended up having to pay for my car being towed.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. But they wouldn't let me get any of my possessions in it until I signed kind of my rights away, which I ended up doing.
Probably didn't have much in there anyway.
I didn't. Some stuff from moving. I ended up getting that signed over, and they actually had to hit up this town, which, again, doesn't have a whole lot of infrastructure, and the resources that they use don't go towards, making the town a better, more habitable place. They go to things like the beekeeper calling the mayor on a whim because he doesn't like my car being parked where his employees park.
That was ridiculous. What was the fallout for the mayor running up a $2,000 plus bill for your car?
Well, it was funny because I actually met him after that, and he was bragging to me like I was going to be impressed that he was the mayor of this town. And
he didn't know it was you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, oh, you're the mayor. You're the one that had my car towed for no reason. And he got really sheepish, and he was like, it's not the time or place to discuss this.
Yeah. What is the time and place?
Yeah, I was like, if you're going to brag about your accomplishments, you should also face up to your mistakes.
Seriously.
But I ended up going in and confronting the beekeeper, too, and he wasn't very apologetic. He actually ended up calling me sir.
What?
Yeah, he was like, I was like, hey, I came in very nice because I didn't want to scare him off. And I was like, I just want to let you know the consequences of what you did.
Good for you. Stand up for yourself.
Yeah, I was very kind of hard-nosed with him, and he was like, oh, yes, sir. I mean, ma'am.
What?
And I was like, well, okay, whatever. And so
weird.
He knew, and then the police knew, and they actually had to make a mandate that same cop could no longer work night shifts.
Now that's interesting because why? I mean, she was following the mayor's order.
Right. But I guess they didn't trust her after that. I don't really know if they pinned it on her or what went down, but I found this out in confidence. And so this is kind of another secret I was supposed to tell, but the new night cop had told me, because I was kind of chit-chatting with him one day, and he had told me that he was the only one allowed on night duty now because of my car incident.
Oh my gosh, what a fate. I would think that night duty is not a favored time to work either, so unless he's making some extra change for it. But
yeah.
So he's the only one allowed to work night duty. Great.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
I know.
That's really interesting there. I don't see any reason why she would be removed from night duty for this because she was simply following orders, unless, of course, there was something going on behind the scenes and she was, the quote unquote fall guy.
Yeah, pretty much. I felt really bad for her because she at least reached out to me afterwards, and told me what she had done.
Right. Well, she's probably going to question any orders from the mayor that she gets in the future.
Yeah, that was not a very good couple of first months in office for him.
Really? What else happened?
I just know he wasn't very, he wasn't one of the names in town. And so I think he got a lot of pushback from some people. But,
I see.
I don't think that they ever knew that a lot of their tax money went to towing some random chick's car, for no reason other than his friend didn't want it there.
Right.
So.
Okay. Interesting story. So, meantime, all this is happening and you're still living at the apartment on the top floor with the rain and the bats.
Mm-hmm.
And did you end up erecting one of these pop-up canopy screen party tents in your bedroom?
No, those things are expensive. They're like $400.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I kind of wish that I had because soon I started to have problems with the bats.
What happened?
This apartment's very small. 2 bedrooms. I think it was 500 something square feet.
2 bedrooms, 500 square feet?
Yes.
Bedrooms must have been very small.
Oh, yes. And there was no living room, and the kitchen was just kind of this tiny little kitchen. So I started to notice I have very sensitive skin, and I have a lot of allergies. In fact, when I was in elementary school, I was allergic to the bus seat. I had to sit on a towel or else I would break out on my legs. So I'm very allergic to lots of different things. I have really sensitive skin. And I noticed that I was getting these crazy hives that I've never gotten before. And they started off kind of maybe a dime sized, but they would actually spread to cover my entire upper arm.
Gosh.
And they would change so much. The allergic reaction I was having would change so much that I would actually map it out hour by hour. So I would have like these jagged kind of map topographic lines on my arms and legs just to kind of monitor it and see, you know, because it was just changing so much. And I could not figure out what the allergen was. I couldn't figure it out. I just knew that I was having these, you know, super itchy moments. And I wasn't, you know, outdoors. It wasn't, you know, mosquitoes or anything. I didn't know what it was until I found my first bat bug.
Oh my gosh. You said bat bug, right?
I did. I said bat bug. It is not bed bugs.
Okay. Never heard of a bat bug, but I assume that it is bed bug-like.
Yes.
In that it will destroy you.
Yes. So it's actually the evolutionary relative of bed bugs.
No kidding.
Yeah. Bed bugs evolved from them. So.
Father of bed bug.
Yes, I know. Curse their name.
Yeah.
They are little tiny, I want to say maybe the size of kind of a apple seed when they're adults. And they have these little ridges. They look really nasty, kind of like ticks, because they're very flat. They're crawlers. They don't jump or fly, and they like to hide. And so when they drink your blood,
oh God,
the blood is visible in their little abdomens. So you know when they fed on you.
Oh, it's nasty. And are these bat bugs, I guess their mission is the same as their evolutionary relatives in that they just want to destroy you.
Pretty much. They are different in the fact that you can only really tell them apart microscopically. But if you have a bat infestation, that's probably what you have. And so their big difference is that they cannot reproduce on human blood. It's only on bat blood. So the problem only becomes bad when the bats go south, because then they don't have anything to feed on.
Interesting. I did not know that bats went south for the winter.
Some of them do, yeah.
Interesting.
I think some of them hibernate, but these ones definitely left.
Okay, and
for
they leave
year.
the bugs behind.
Yeah, and the bugs can live for an entire year without their host bats.
What a bummer.
Yeah, so I started noticing these bugs, and they were biting me and giving me these crazy hives that would just make matrix maps all over my body. I was, of course, horrified. And so once I figured out what they were, I did a ton of research. And it turns out they behave very similarly to bed bugs because they do like to feed at night and they hide in your bed. So I actually pulled down my bed covers and there were dozens of them crawling around in my bed.
That is the worst, man. I have not had experience with bed bugs or bat bugs for that matter, but I have heard tell, as they say, it sounds like an absolute nightmare. I mean, was that a catalyst for you to finally move out of this place, or do you have some other solution?
Yeah, that was the final straw for me. If you think about it, it's really, you're supposed to feel safe in your place of living, you know, and in your bed, when you're the most vulnerable, is where you should feel the safest. But I knew that these things were crawling around in my bed and eating me in my sleep, and there was nothing I could do about it. So I called my landlord. I switched to the second bedroom, which I had to pull the bed away from the wall, and I had to put the bed kind of risers on with some baby powder in between so that it would like dry them out. And when they tried to crawl up, because they can only crawl, but they were falling from the ceiling also.
Oh my God.
There was kind of these open holes in the ceiling where I guess like light units were supposed to be, but they never got put in. And so there were open holes in the ceiling in the bathroom and in that bedroom. And I would find they would just fall out of the ceiling from the bat's habitat to mine.
What a nightmare. Carol must have had bat bugs in her apartment as well.
So yes, she did. I called Carol and I told her, and I was like crying. I was like, I cannot live here. These bugs are here. You need to fix it. And she goes, oh, like those things that bite you at night? Yeah, I've had those before.
Oh, God. Wow.
And I was like, she was like, they're just like night bite bugs. And I'm like, no, these things are giving me horrible allergies. She was like, well, I had some in my guest room when my daughter was here and she told me about it. And we just kind of put a fogger up and they went away. So I said, I don't think fogger is going to do it. I found maybe a dozen of these bugs that like to hide. So you shouldn't be even seeing them. But I'd found so many at that point that I was like, this is an infestation. Foggers aren't going to work because bat bug foggers will kill them still. But their whole deal is they hide. So if they hide while you're fogging the room, then they come out afterwards. It's not going to kill them. And if they're falling from the ceiling, it's not going to go up into the ceiling where the bats live anyway. So I was like, foggers aren't going to work, but she still tried. Mm-hmm. And I don't think she even believed there was a problem in the building until one night I had seen one crawling up the outside of the downstairs of the building. It was kind of on the door frame. And so I was like, perfect opportunity to like show her. And so I brought her downstairs and I picked one with a little, plier, put it in a baggie and said, this is the bat bugs. Would you like to see it bite me to have proof to you?
Oh my God.
And she was like, don't be ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not the ridiculous one. You're the one that's being ridiculous.
No,
you're not
kidding.
believing that this is an issue. And for some reason, she had decided, even after seeing them, that they were bed bugs because you can only tell them apart microscopically. And she was determined that bed bugs were actually better than bat bugs, which is not even true because bat bugs have worse bites.
I mean, regardless, who cares? They need to be gone.
Yeah. And bed bugs are harder to get rid of. So I actually was like, it's bad if you're telling people these are bed bugs because I didn't bring them in here. But I think that's what it was. She was trying to diffuse the blame onto me,
It's such a ridiculous debate because it's either way, the problem has to be dealt with.
Right. But I guess that was her way of saving face. Kind of like it was my fault that, the pipes froze.
Yeah, that was your fault for wanting running water. And so
Yeah.
I take it you did not have to demonstrate the bug biting you. You got out of that.
No.
Okay, good.
I did.
I'm glad. You already had enough bites.
Yes, Lord knows.
Wow.
So that was the catalyst for me to leave.
Okay. You probably had to sanitize everything, right? On your way out?
Oh, yes.
Your sheets, your furniture, your books. I mean,
Yes.
What did you have to do?
So, I had to throw most things away. A lot of the stuff I didn't have time to sanitize, I put outside of my new place and it was stolen. So I had a lot of stuff that kind of walked away from there. And I was kind of like, I hope there were bad bugs in that because that's what you deserve, you thief.
Yeah, right. Seriously, show them.
But yeah, it's such a problem that I had to cook some stuff in the oven.
You mean like belongings?
For clothes and things, you can use the dryer and that's enough to kill them. So I brought all my stuff to the laundromat because I wasn't going to bring it to my new place and just dried them there. I had different colors of trash bags for stuff that was sanitized versus not. The stuff that I couldn't sanitize right away, because again, I was trying to move all of my possessions out of this 2-story place. I had a bunch of Tupperware, but the one thing I could not get rid of was my collection of books. I am a huge reader and I love to read and I have all these books that, are very valuable to me. So I couldn't get rid of them. So my only option was to cook them in the oven. Wow,
that's an actual recommended way to sanitize your books from bed bugs or bat bugs?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was it's, I think 170 degrees or something for 2 hours.
Okay.
So it was a very slow process.
Yeah.
And I just would put my whole box in there and I was literally cooking the books.
Maybe that's the title of the show.
Maybe. I don't know.
Books.
I was also, it's a story about the bats and the bees, and the flowers and the trees. Nobody ever gave me that bat bug talk.
Right.
I didn't know I needed one.
Well, you're giving us the bad bug talk, though. Thank you for the education.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You're very welcome. I hope that nobody ever needs it like I did.
Okay, so was it tricky getting your stuff out otherwise?
Yeah. So I actually, I constructed this kind of zip line from the second story down to the first that kind of connected to the outside fence. I got a bunch of reusable grocery bags and some carabiners, and I would attach the carabiner to the grocery bag, put all my stuff in, and just zip line it down.
Wow, what a sight that must have been. What, was that was that a bed bug induced system, or that was just for efficiency?
Well, a little of both, because if you think about it, you have to cook all of your possessions that you don't throw away. So it was taking a very long time to move my stuff into this place, even though I had a whole month to do it. I still have stuff in the freezer that I'm not super ready to take out, even though it's been almost a year. So I was, doing this right so that the infestation did not follow me. In order to do that, I had to expedite some processes.
So you were busy ziplining your possessions from the window to the ground.
It was actually really fun.
It sounds fun.
Yeah.
Did that make Facebook?
No. Again, this was all very hush-hush because, neither of us wanted to bring it to both places that we interacted at work. So I had only told a very few people. And also there's kind of a stigma and a shame, even though it wasn't my fault.
For sure.
It's embarrassing to be infested with bugs, and if she's so determined to call them bed bugs, that makes it my fault, even though I hadn't gone anywhere. It was embarrassing, and that's another thing that made me keep it a secret, even though it wasn't something that was my fault.
Understood. And so this new place that you're moving to, dare I ask, were you renting from another board member?
No.
He broke the cycle.
Well, sort of. She was the niece to my coworker.
Okay. Boy, everything's connected in this town, man.
I know. But this was in the next town over. It was the same town where I worked. I lived there for 6 months, but then I was downsized at my job in December. And at the same time, I was evicted from that apartment because somebody else had purchased the building and they wanted to move a lot of their workers into the units there. So,
gosh.
Yeah, so I wasn't even there for very long. Luckily, I had all my stuff in boxes for the most part still, and I was able to move to the state I'm in now, where I have an amazing job, and I live in this tiny little cabin in the Badlands, and it's super cute. I've got antelopes in my yard and way out in the middle of nowhere, and no pest infestation issues.
I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
And
it's about time.
Yeah. And I can attest to the fact that you live in the boonies because we had a little bit of a time getting your microphone kit to you.
Yeah, we had a blizzard in the middle of spring. We had 2 actually. And for one, I didn't even have power for 3 days. And for the other one, the snow was all the way up to over my head in certain places. So
yeah, so we had delivery issues, but then also the Postal Service didn't even know your address.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Very confusing. Yeah, you gotta, well, anyway, as long as you have running water and heat, no bat bugs.
No bad bugs.
You're in good shape.
Yeah, I never thought I would be so happy. There is a sad part to the story.
Okay.
With all of the guano and, the respiratory problems, I actually did lose a cat to the bat bugs.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
That is awful.
Because bat bugs also bite cats, right? He's got immune problems and he just never recovered. And he was like my soul cat. He was super special and, he gave every last bit of life he had to helping me get through this difficult time.
Well, you guys were there for each other.
Yeah, seriously. He's my little buddy.
So, Judy, I think it sounds like we're pretty much at the end of your story, but I think that there is an epilogue. In your secret that you submitted. You told me about how the bat bug lady, a.k.a. Carol, your friend and landlord and boss.
Double boss,
rage quit her job.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that part.
Yeah, just for kicks.
Okay, so so Carol, that bug lady, she shortly after I moved out, she rage quit her job.
That's I love that term. What sent her through the roof?
Yeah, right? What could send a lady who literally lives with bats through the roof?
Yeah, she's very chill, with the whole bat situation. I can't imagine what would get under her skin aside from bat bugs. Yeah.
I still feel bad for her. I think that she was just overwhelmed with the bats and with me moving out, and she was being very toxic at that workplace, running people off. People were cutting left and right because they didn't want to have to deal with her bad attitude. And so she waited until the busiest day of the year and packed up her desk and then just bounced with no notice.
What?
Yeah.
Just like that.
Just like that. She didn't give 2 weeks. She didn't, she actually deleted a lot of files that they needed there.
Oh, great. Burn the place down on her way out the door.
Oh, I know. They need to burn her building down because everyone in town already thinks it's kind of like just irredeemable,
Yeah, well, it's infested. It's falling apart. The roof is falling in. There's guano, bat bugs.
Yeah.
Bats.
Yeah, it's just, maybe she does have rabies. I don't know. And then it's just messing with her brain. So now she lives and she doesn't go to work. She lives there by herself, her and the bats now.
She just rage quit because...
Yeah, I'm not really sure the reason. I think she just allowed the toxicity of, things that were going on at her home to invade her mental health. And mental health is so important. You need to take care of it. And she's kind of always been of the belief that you don't need therapy. You just suck it up and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And I think she needs to talk to somebody. I feel really badly for her, but also she kind of deserved it in a way because she didn't take care of the problem when it could have been taken care of. I mean, the bats have been in that building for at least 20 years. The basement of her place used to be like a little shop, and she's got all sorts of junk in there, like old exercise equipment from who knows what. It's just a total wreck downstairs. It's a dump. And she says she's going to sell the building, but I don't know who's going to buy it.
Is it on a good corner? Maybe somebody wants the land.
I mean, not really. There's only 1.5 traffic lights in this whole town.
Right. Well, it is a walking commute to the town beekeeper. That's a selling point.
Yeah, maybe he could take over the building and then they can park on the street all that they want.
There you go. Get some fresh honey if you live there. No problem.
Oh, that would be so nice.
Yeah, it's one benefit. Wow. Okay, so life is good now at your new place. You're insanely happy, right?
I am so happy. I'm supported and loved already, and it's just a dream come true. I've got a toilet in my place. And
that's fantastic. You don't have to pour Fiji water in it to get it to work?
No Fiji water. I don't have to shower at my friends' houses, and I'm no longer, got matrices of bat bug hives.
And so now you're out from the clutches of these people that were so intricately involved in everything in town that you are now free to tell these secrets.
Yes, that's exactly it. And it's been really cathartic too, so much that I was holding in and not telling because I didn't want to ruin anyone's reputation or,
right,
piss somebody off, from my workplace. And, it's so nice to be able to kind of offload all the things that I've been keeping to myself all this time.
Well, good for you, Judy. I'm so happy for you. I'm glad this has a happy ending because you really went through some stuff.
Yeah.
And I can see how it would be a real test,
Oh, yes.
Thanks a lot for sharing your secrets.
Thank you, Ben.
I guess we learned that power corrupts, even on a small scale. From board members and property owners to a new small-town mayor looking to flex his muscle. Well, Jane got away from the small-town merry-go-round by moving somewhere even smaller. the Badlands, where she's currently surrounded by 0 people, just wildlife. She does drive a short distance to a great job, but her cabin is definitely off the grid. The one thing she does have to contend with is wicked amounts of snow, but life still has to be an adventure, right? Any chance you have a picture of that bat bug house?
I actually went there the other day just to take some because I knew you'd probably ask.
No kidding.
Yeah, and it was funny because I went there and I saw Carol entering the building. I was like, oh no.
That's great.
Oh no, she's going to see me.
Jane also sent a selfie, a picture of her cat, and a picture of bat bug bites she sustained at her neck. Don't miss them. Check out social media. Her handle is @SecretRoomPod.
Remember when Jane told us about the terrible apartment she lived in when she was an au pair in Paris? Well, she joins me in 1 week to tell me about it on The Secret Room Unlocked.
Susie Lark hosts the premium version of the podcast for members at Patreon and now on Apple Podcasts with a free trial. Do you have a notional secret to share? Well, if it has some basis in reality, we can workshop it. Send it to me now at our website, secretroompod.com. Thanks to Susie Lark, Luna Patel, Marco, and Breakmaster Cylinder, who composed our theme and music. Thanks for downloading your favorite indie podcast that could every other Tuesday night.
This is The Secret Room, a podcast about the stories no one ever tells.
I'm Ben Ham. Pod on, Judy.
Pod on, Ben.
That was kind of low-key pod on.
Was that good or bad?
You have such an infectious personality. I would expect it to be a little bit more upbeat.